Oh, what an intro that is. I absolutely love it. Getting facts kind of right is probably my favourite line of the whole thing. Welcome, everyone, to the third installment, third epic stellar event that it is of the Top Step podcast. I'm Stuart Brown.
I'm Rhyss Ashmore.
And we're here to get in. Rhyss, I can taste it. It's that close. Speaking of tasting it, it's that time of the afternoon. Get it started. I swear to God, they get harder and harder to open. Or maybe it's just that my fingers are getting a little bit weak.
They should be getting stronger.
They should be, but my fingering exercises are not conducted in the gym. Anyway, wow, let's bring it right back into the tolerance. It's that close. I can taste it.
One more week. This time, almost exactly to the time. This time next week, we'll be watching round one of the Formula One.
We are, yeah. 3:00 on Monday. We're recording this local time, but 3:00 Sunday, the race kicks off. The race that stops the nation. That's Bathurst, but look, it's the race that's everyone has been waiting for since.
I'm also glad you just told me that it's almost told me that it's Monday there, because I am so far out of whack with this public holiday that I was like, it's Sunday.
Yeah, well, we've got a public holiday here in Victoria, Labor Day public holiday. So great day to sit down and have a chat about everything Formula One. I think we've got a stellar show lined up for you as well, wherever you're joining us. No doubt from around the globe with this globally trending, massively popular show that we're putting together. Got to say, absolutely love the support we've had so far. It doesn't sound like big numbers, but we're into double digits on YouTube followers. We're into double digits on TikTok followers as well. And double digits on streams on Spotify. So massive for us 3 shows in.
Yes. Appreciate it all very much.
The thing that I love about it the most is we've got so much cool stuff, or what we think is cool, funny stuff planned for the podcast for the season. We've just been waiting for it to kick off. We haven't been able to use any of it yet. So
having to start the race first.
so if you're liking what we're doing now, you just wait until we roll out some of the stuff that we've got lined up for you. But the show today, let's get into it. So we're going to have a little bit of a chat about what's coming up at the end of this week, and then get into review. F1 testing, of course. All the cars have been out on track, and that was a little bit of a drollery from my viewing of it.
There's a few pretty good surprises there, I thought. Just seeing some cars do things that I wasn't expecting to see. I know it's only practice and testing. I know that, but seeing Sainz do what he did in the Williams was very, very good to see. I know we've spoken about it before, but there's some really good results, I think, coming out of that and seeing some times. And I think I was just excited to see cars go around in a circle, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it feels like such a long off season, but in talking about that, it's been a massively long off season, right? There's been five months before the first testing. Good to see that Mercedes forgot that Lewis Hamilton left the team. So this is a Mercedes truck or transport trolley. It's definitely not a truck, but it's got a Jenny in the back there. A transport trolley, and this is them during the practice.
Wasn't even leaving, the HQ or anything like that. It was at the practice. That dumbfounded me.
The thing that I like as well is just how bored this bloke in the background looks. Like, he looks like he could not give a toss as to why he's there. And they got old mate here with his thumb just trying to peel the stickers off. I mean, use a razor blade, mate.
I feel like at the top of the game, there could have been, a heat gun maybe used on the wraps on the cars. Like, there could have been a few things that they could have handed the bloke, but he must have the longest thumbnail there to get it off for him.
Pretty good at pit stops too, Mercedes. You'd figure there'd be 4 or 5 people out there just getting into it, getting it done, and getting that trolley back on to the racetrack. But you touched on it, and I think that's probably the highlight for me from F1 testing is we probably didn't know which way it was going to go with Sainz. We've spoken before about the changes and James at Williams and the changes that makes with him being Toto's love child, and how we're probably expecting a resurgence of Williams to maybe that sort of 80s and 90s Williams team. And they could have come out and really done nothing, but I think that they were probably the one that did the most in testing. And as you say, caveat that it's just testing, but probably the strongest performer across the 3 days.
Yeah, no, and again, I've gone back through and looked at the look at the numbers and the statistics from practice, and to be honest, Max was at top, won the championship. Lewis was at top, won the championship. So there's a little bit in there, but not saying that Williams is going to be a championship contender. But I definitely think much higher than I thought first season out, and the fact that they're not using Excel this year to develop their car may help as well.
Yeah, and I mean that's got to be taken into consideration. Where they were at 12 months ago, where they're at 24 months ago to now is such a big, evolution of the team. And effectively, one of the few privateers, not a factory-backed team in any real way, shape, or form. And they've done a massive job to get where they are in such short time. Obviously, having Carlos join the team is a big boon for them as well. And it could have been easy for them to come out, particularly with next year, one eye on the prize next year with the new car and the new development and all that sort of stuff, to come out this year and really just be another also ran.
Yeah,
but I don't think they're going to do that. I think they've done a really good job.
Yeah, we've touched. I've touched base in it in previous episodes, but having science there and giving them the information that they need, like it's gonna help massively. And having James there, understanding, getting told things from the drivers and actually executing that into the team will be it's a revolving door. So I'm excited. But I guess other than that, from practice for me, it was pretty so and so in the other results, I guess.
Yeah, I think the rookies all did a good job, was probably the other highlight to take from it. I mean, it would have been easy for them to all bomb. I think a lot of them did, well in excess of 150 laps on some of the days. I think the first day that Jack Doohan was driving the Alpine, he knocked up 130 or 140 odd laps in it and was well inside the top 10. And look, I think that's probably the thing to not take much notice of is the comparative lap times between the cars, because they're all doing different things. Some of them are trying to do long runs to, make sure that the cars are ready for Australia. And the drivers don't necessarily all drive either on all 3 days. I think Red Bull had Liam in the car only on Saturday and then ran Max on the Sunday, whatever day of the week it was where they were, but and just ran that one full day. So really wasn't a full grid comparison for us to get, and the overall fastest lap time was in varied conditions, etc., etc. So
it's still very cool to see see them all back out there and get the hype well and truly rolling.
Now, of course, moving along, we did get for the first time to see Lewis Hamilton in that red Ferrari, and he wasn't the fastest out of the 2 drivers over testing, but he did manage to come out with this, which I think I nearly burnt a hole on the face of my phone texting you a picture of this to say, have you seen this rubbish? We are the strongest pairing Formula One has probably ever had. And he's not referring to anybody of the past. He's referring to himself and Charles Leclerc. Now, I messaged you this and I said, prepare. And I've done some preparation going back a long way. And I think that probably is overshooting the mark by a long stretch. And that there's a fair few drivers who are in the lunch queue ahead of Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc. So
I don't often hear you get as not heated, but as enthused about a topic when a headline comes out. But this one really didn't sit well.
So let's go right back to Fangio and Sterling Moss. Better pairing, in my opinion, much better pairing. Clark and Hill. Clark, one of the best, if not still regarded as the best driver of all time, cut short in his prime. And, of course, Damon Hill's father, Graham Hill, world champion, as well as Clark. Both of them, multiple world champions. Lauda and Prost, when they, resurrected things. Prost winning the world title. Lauda winning the world title, of course. Senna and Prost at McLaren. Probably the best partnership of all time, in my opinion.
Doesn't get any better than that.
And that's only getting up to the early 90s.
Yeah.
There's others. I'm sure there's others. They're just the ones that I've picked out.
But even going to the more modern day and looking at Hamilton and Bottas, like the World Championship, the Constructors' Championship, the wins, Charles Leclerc, I say only, but Charles Leclerc has 8 race wins. Now, I understand Hamilton's a lot more decorated than that, but Charles Leclerc has 8 race wins. Now, in comparison to that, I know it's over a longer period of time, but Daniel Ricciardo has 8 race wins. So it's such a bold statement before a race, before a season. Like, if this was 2026 and they'd taken out the constructors, taken out the world championship, clean sweeped it in the first year, okay, there's a little bit of merit, but there's no foundations for this to stand on.
This isn't even the strongest pairing Ferrari have ever had, let alone the strongest pairing Formula One has ever had. The strongest pairing of all time, and this is now the third time I've said this in this conversation, but it depends on so what do we class as the strongest pairing, right? Is it Drivers' Championship? Is it Constructors' Championship? Is it both? And I think as a pair, it has to be Constructors' Championship, right? Because two drivers can't win the world title.
Work together, yeah. Well, you can't be Drivers' Championship because look at Checo and Max. Not a strong driver pairing. Max still took out the championship. So it has to be Constructors.
Yep.
That has to be the pairing.
So Schumacher and Rubens Barrichello, if Michael Schumacher, the only time, and I think I said it in the first show, the only time Rubens Barrichello won for Ferrari was when Michael Schumacher didn't finish. The only time they didn't finish 1-2 was if one was in some seasons where one of them didn't finish the race. You know, they dominated once Ferrari got it sorted out, they dominated. And in terms of strongest pairings, that's what the strength comes from. These two are going to fight because Lewis, number one driver, Charles thinks he's the number one driver. So there's no chance they're going to work. I can't see them working in the same direction or pulling in the same direction as Rubens and Michael did. Just can't see it happening. And to continue the rant, in terms of the most successful driver pairing of all time, again in a Ferrari, Sebastian Vettel and Kimi Räikkönen, they won 5 world titles as teammates.
Again, for Ferrari.
Like, so I get where Lewis is coming from. I don't know if maybe the sunnies are too tight. Maybe the fitting didn't go quite so well, but they have a long, long, long way to go to be classed as the strongest pairing Formula One has ever had. They've got an equally long journey to get to be the strongest pairing even Ferrari has had.
Oh, absolutely. And even if that said the strongest pairing Formula One has this season, and if McLaren has worked out their stuff, Lando and Piastri, if they can work that out, that will be, to me, one of the strongest pairings. Because exactly what I've said in the past, if Lando doesn't finish, Piastri will be there. If Piastri doesn't finish, Lando will be there. If they get that right, they will be, one of the strongest pairings on the F1 grid this season.
It's a really, really strong argument. And even if you go back to last season, they were the only team that had the opportunity to choose who won races in promoting their own ambitions to be Drivers' World Championship as well as Constructors. So that's a really good point.
So we see, we had the issue early in the season where they hadn't chosen a clear 1-2 driver and things like that. But they backed Lando. Lando qualified 15th and Piastri was second.
Yeah.
And Piastri went on to win the race. Lando wasn't there, Piastri was. Then later in the season when Piastri was having issues, Piastri wasn't there, Lando was. They're working there together. So I just any scenario I put through my head, it doesn't put those two as the best pairing of the season, let alone that F1's ever seen.
And can we also just reflect on who it is who said it? Like, if Lando came out with that, I'd be like, oh, yeah, okay, well,
can you imagine?
Why am I not surprised?
Can you imagine the media reaction if Lando had come out and said anything along those lines? But because of who said it, that's fine.
But does Lewis really need to blow his own trumpet at all? I mean, I don't think he does. So anyway, it certainly was one that got me inspired to get on today and have a chat about it. But what a joke. What an absolute insult from one of the greatest ever to drive in the sport to all of those who lay the foundations for him to be that person. What an insult. Anyway, we'll move on. We could talk about it for another hour and a half, I reckon, but we
So
won't.
we might have to do a side pod on just that topic.
We'll cut that bit out of the
Yep.
pod and we'll put it up as a thing. Jump on, tell us who you think is the best driver pairing of all time.
in the new segment of What Grinds Stu's Gears.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. We were going to have What Grinds My Gears as a segment. I didn't get the intro ready for this. Or the other segment that we'll just announce quickly, which is Mike Crack, which is where we have a crack at somebody who does something stupid. This would fit very well into the Mike Crack segment.
This is locked in, those two segments. This is how they're born. So...
well, let's move on. This is something that we can all get around, absolutely and wholeheartedly get around. F1 considering ditching hybrids to bring back V10s. Now, I've got a couple of questions here for you on this. We spoke about Monaco and the problems that Monaco is facing with, and this is without notice, by the way. I didn't do this in the brief beforehand, so apologies, but without notice, to keep it real here on the Top Set podcast. One of the problems with the cars now is that the amount of stuff they have to condense into it outside of the safety shell and all the good stuff they've done around improving driver safety. The hybrid systems are huge. And a lot of people don't realise that, but it is probably the main reason, other than, stability and all the other things that try to get the cars quicker, that the cars now are the size that they are.
And
this...
Mm-hmm.
Yep. What are your thoughts around that?
Emphasising on the driver safety, because we've seen what the Halo has done, and there's drivers that are racing this year that would not be here today if the Halo wasn't there. So without impeding on the Halo and the driver safety, if we could get that V10 in, decrease the size of the cars, that is going to make so many races that are, whoever qualies 90% of the time wins a race, that sort of Monaco. That sort of race is going to become interesting again, because there's going to be, instead of 2 wide, you're going to be able to get 3 wide, 4 cars wide. It's going to absolutely end the sound.
That will just be, if you're listening to this and you haven't heard the song of a V10, YouTube it, find it, and listen to it. It is the greatest sound. 2.5 litres of screaming V10 at 15,000 RPM. Go and have a look at Michael Schumacher 2000, 2001 onboard footage, or even just outside footage, and you'll hear it. It's really, really fantastic.
Nothing compares to the screen. Nothing does.
And at the end of the day, and this is one of the things that we've spoken about before the pod with hybrids, and that, the hybrid technology, there's 2 benefits to it. Obviously, one of them, which for mine is actually a really small benefit, is the environmental benefit. And I don't say that to downplay the environmental damage and all that sort of stuff and car racing, but there is so much more environmental damage done by Formula One as a travelling global circus than there is by the cars on the 60 laps that they do on a race weekend, or that 200 laps they do across a race weekend, that they could easily offset that going back to V10 with just economies around the way they travel.
The compromise of that was to run I think an ethanol-based E10 fuel, or a base fuel, which was what the FIA president had come out and said, that he was looking into changing the E-Series fuel into the race fuel to offset that sort of carbon offset. But you look at the amount of superstars that have private jets. Taylor Swift, who flies from her concert to a boyfriend's football match. Like, the carbon offset of that for one person to travel is crazy. So there's other things that can be done in the world rather than 20 cars driving around a track for 2 hours.
And there is, of course, I'm going to keep saying it. I'll just stop saying it. We talk about Formula One all the time. The schedule, the calendar is so inefficient.
It's so bad.
We go to America twice, and I get that we go to different sides of America. But we go to America, South America, we go to Europe a couple of times, we come to Asia a few times. They need to just travel once around the globe. I don't think anyone's going to be disappointed that Japan, Australia, Singapore, all of those Asian Grand Prix are all together. Time zone wise, it's great. We get a run of, things that are in a good time zone. So, and the efficiency of them not having to move the cars three-quarters of the way around the globe when they do that. And I'm sure they're working on it, and it's a cost-cutting exercise and all that sort of stuff. So all of that included in it will help offset going back to full noise, full, fuel, off we go kind of stuff. Because the second thing is that hybrids helped with the development of hybrid vehicles globally, and I think that's partly why Toyota was so keen on getting into Formula One, why Toyota's probably keen on getting back into Formula One, is still a global leader in hybrid technology. And I'm sure all the Tesla owners that are listening to the podcast will be throwing food at their listening device right now, but Toyota's still the global leader in hybrid technology. There's no question in my mind that they're the global leader in hybrid technology still. But going to Formula One is the only way you experience it is through the sound and the smell. Like, that's the experience of car racing. So to take that away, and the hybrids still obviously have a sound and all that sort of stuff, but the V10 sound would shake you to your core. Like, I remember it. And you don't get that now at the Formula One. And people might say that's a good thing. For mine, not a good thing at all. So this will get rid of that.
No, absolutely. So I was just actually trying to find the statistics on how many times they actually travel kilometre-wise around the world. The closest I've been is over 3 times in terms of the back and forth travel.
Yep.
And then that's also not taking into consideration the flying home, all the drivers' flights and things like that. So, if they could have exactly what you're saying, to travel around the world more than 3 times in a season, in terms of kilometres is huge.
Yeah, so I think absolutely a big fan for it.
I will, yes, anything that they can do to bring V10s back, I'm here for.
Yeah, no questions asked. It'll make the cars smaller. It'll make the racing better. It'll make the experience better. And at the end of the day, it's an entertainment sport as it is. So, yeah, I can't see a downside to doing it. I think they have to make it happen.
It'll also bring, I know that people go into races sell out quite quickly, but in terms of viewers, we'll bring a lot of nostalgia back for people that used to watch Formula One. New people coming into it that aren't into the electronic sports and things like that. It'll just work. So just do it. Listen to us. Do it.
One of the things we will never cover on this podcast is Formula E. So if you're here waiting for information on that, you can leave now. Turn the light out and close the door, please, on your way. Alrighty, next up, some good news for Australia. And I'm going to murder this one. But Ava Anagostadis, I think I got close to that. Signing for F1 Academy. So this is huge. I didn't know a lot about F1 Academy, if I'm brutally honest. But I think you know a little bit more about it than I do.
A little bit. So 17-year-old Australian, first Australian to ever join the F1 Academy, which is huge. Led by Susie Wolff, which is also massive. The backing that she brings, the knowledge that she brings, obviously is crazy. So the crazy thing about this too is another racer that she currently has her L plates, so she driving on the road and then gets into these massively high performance vehicles. So she's going to. Sorry, I'm just jumping to here. She's jumping into an F1 Academy campaign with TAG. So the offset or the step forward to this, obviously, is the conversation of more women in motorsport, more women in Formula One. So if we see the growth in this series and the talent and the skill, then the door's open.
Yeah. So and is there a pathway for this into then being testing? I mean, it's got to be a great thing if you're super talented, which obviously Ava is, to be working with Susie Wolff, whose husband or in their shareholding owns a massive share of, the most successful or one of the most successful Formula One teams of the modern era in Mercedes. So, could we see this as a pathway for her to maybe testing for Mercedes or being picked up by, one of the junior teams to develop, or is it an F2 pathway?
Transition to Formula 3. So
Formula 3, okay.
It opens a door into the Formula series, but we see everyone in Formula 1 at the moment going through the F3, F2 into F1. So that's what I mean, like seeing the the talent in there, and if she's got it, stepping into that Formula 3 category, and then winning the Formula 3 category, doing well into there, stepping into Formula 2. So it's a huge stepping stone for women and women racing.
Yeah, no, and that's a really good thing, and nothing better than there being another Australian represented as well. So, well done to Ava. We'll keep an eye on that academy progress as well. I'm not sure the schedule. We've got to do a little bit more work on that, to be fair, and see what comes of it when we follow this year's shenanigans. But we'll keep you up to date on her progress as well. So, yeah, congratulations to Ava on that one. We'll keep an eye on it. Fans already. Haven't even seen her drive, but yeah, fans already. Let's kick it on to our favourite group of comedians, which is the team at Aston Martin. So Adrian Newey, after 642 years on the sidelines between transitioning from Red Bull to Aston Martin, has finally stepped in and done his first day of work. This was a photo of him on his first day, and yeah, just some amusing stuff. I think this was from F1 Troll, whose stuff gives me a chortle that we found. So yeah, he's joined there. I heard that he's asked for and had a bedroom built at the facility so that he can sleep there while he's working on developing the new car. That's some sort of commitment.
Yeah, his wife tweeted, "See you in 5 years." I think it was, and I'm just reading his autobiography at the moment, but it seems like this is common practice for him. Moving to a team, he's just diving to it and looking at his results, being the top of his game and everything like that. It makes sense. Hardest worker in his field, so.
That's why he's got 100 mil. That's why he gets the big bucks. You know.
Yeah.
Success sometimes takes obsession, or obsession leads to success. So, given his track record of designing championship-winning cars over the last 30 years plus, it doesn't really surprise me. So, I don't know if a lot of people probably don't know that he designed the Williams, the all-conquering Williams. It was the first car that he built, the one with the self-adjusting suspension in it. He also designed the car for Brawn F1 from memory, and of course the long success. That car won in its debut season, of course, but and then became, I think now it's Mercedes, and then of course the long-standing Red Bull association. So big things expected from him at Aston Martin. He's got a fresh sheet of paper and an unlimited budget, I would suggest, to be able to deliver. And then he's got one of the most underrated drivers of all time and a lemon to squeeze.
I was going to say it is a big ask that I'm not convinced that even with Newey's superpowers, that he has the correct driver to do what he's had before.
It's a little bit different when Daddy Stroll buys an F3 outfit and an F2 outfit to help you get to those championships. He's bought himself an F1 outfit, but the difference is that all the other drivers are well funded and quite capable. So I don't know, maybe this is the move that they needed. We'll continue to watch. We'll continue to jest about his talents, but at the end of the day, he's there, and he'll get judged by his results like everyone else, and then his contract will get extended, which is the big difference. So, yeah, on we go. This one caught my eye. So we don't purport to thoroughly investigate the accuracy of the journalism for some of the stuff that we quote here, because we're just, at the end of the day, fans of the sport. Crashnet, some of their stuff's, I don't know, good. Some of it's not so good. But this one caught my eye. Max Verstappen will be backing a GT3 team using Aston Martin machinery in the GT World Challenge Europe Endurance Cup, including the prestigious Spa 24-hour. Now, we have seen some silly figures be thrown around about him potentially joining Aston Martin when his contract's up at Red Bull. And this grabbed me as being very, very close to the line.
Very, very close to the line. It is interesting. I hadn't actually dived into too much of the Aston Martin side of it. I was sort of lost in that Max's handpicked Chris Lolland, who was racing in his sim racing team to run into the real world. So I was looking at that side of it before the Aston Martin side of it.
Yeah, and that's a big thing, obviously, with I say more and more, like there's hundreds, but there aren't hundreds, but more and more sim racers starting to make that move across into real world racing and doing it successfully. But
And having the backing from obviously Team Redline on your in the sim racing world, and then to have that team building the car and building the sets going into the real world, I'm pretty keen to watch. It's obviously the experiment's been done a few times now, and it's worked and it hasn't worked. But having Verstappen in your corner as a mentor and as a hey, what are you doing type of thing, will probably help anyone.
yeah, and I think another one potentially of the ducks in a row for me. We speculated that Max outside of F1 is probably closer to than further away. And given his involvement in GT racing in the sim world, that's probably where he'll end up heading, which is why signing for Aston Martin for a couple of years or signing for 5 years for Aston Martin and then 2 years driving in Formula One and then a pathway into a GT seat makes sense for him because, again, I think Max would be quick driving anything, but he is such a quick GT driver on the sim. If sim racing translates to real world, then there's an obvious pathway for him at Aston Martin as the closest aligned team to be able to do that with their new GT3 program.
The line that everyone's saying, the line that everyone said that has done sim racing and real life racing is the biggest difference being the G forces. And obviously Max has the experiences with the G forces, with the feeling of the car, with those sort of things. So he that's not a new learning curve for him. The G forces in the F1 car are going to be greater than the G forces in the GT3 car. So he'll have that understanding. I can't see him not being crazy quick jumping into a GT3 car.
No. So it looked, as I said, the ducks are lining up. I think this will continue to gather steam over the next 12 to 18 months.
I'm going to say it now. If Aston Martin are quick this year, then I would expect to see Verstappen move there. If they're not, then I won't. I don't think he will. Because from what he's said in regards to family and spending time and things like that, I don't think he'll go to another team to build from the ground up. Where if he can walk in the door with the machinery built and he knows he can drive, then I think he'll do it. And it's not he doesn't want to put in the work. I think it's the spending the time with his family. His family's growing. He's made comment about his parents and spending more time with that sort of thing. So if they do, if Newey gets it right, the car comes out fast, then I expect them to be there. If it's a project that's going to take 3 to 5 years to get the car there, I can't see him being at Formula One there at all.
Can we also just go back and touch on this, where the net result is him and probably the hardest done by driver who should have won more world titles in Fernando Alonso. So 2026 is obviously Adrian Newey's first car. As you say, if they come out of the box flying, imagine 2 years for Alonso driving first year in that car, second year with Verstappen as well. That would be something to behold. He'd be what, 40? He'd be 41.
The guy's aging backwards, so he'd be 23.
I think he's 39 now. I might be wrong on that. He might be a little bit younger, but or maybe a bit older. But anyway, that would be quite appealing to see. But I think you're right.
He's currently 43.
Currently 43. Okay, so he'll be far out. He'll be 45. That would be interesting.
44 halfway through this year. 44 in July.
But I think you're onto it. We'll see what comes out next year. And that actually takes us to this one, which I grabbed, which is one of my favourite things to put on the screen because it covers up both of our faces pretty much. But we might just go to the side there a little bit. I'll move it up to the top if you're looking at it. I've just put up the 2026 because, it's days out from the first race of 2025. But let's talk about 2026 driver pairings. And there are a couple of things here that interest me, which is why I brought it together. The first one, obviously, which we touched on last week, is Cadillac officially done, signed, documented, delivered. So we are expanding the competition to have 11 teams next year, which, time for another conversation, but means that we're going to go to 12 at some stage. At some stage, I would put, I'm not a betting man, but I would put money on that at some stage we go to 12 teams. 2026, maybe not 2026, maybe 27 or 28. Who that would be, obviously, is a big question, but I think that's coming. So what it does, opens up 2 more seats. And this graphic that I've got on the screen, which is actually from the Formula One website or Formula One Facebook page itself, has Mercedes with 2 no-names or with 2 open contracts, Alpine with an open contract, of course, because Mick Doohan is only on a 1 year
contract. Yep.
Racing Bulls open, Cadillac open, and of course the second seat at Red Bull open as well, because Lawson's only there on a 12-month as well. So I just wanted to quickly touch on who we might think goes to Cadillac.
I don't know anymore. I had 3 months ago, I had an idea of what I thought might happen, but now I'm really not sure. I'm seeing all the things, seeing everything written. My mind was always Ricardo may end up there, but I don't actually see that happening. Then they're trying to get a senior driver. They're trying to get potentially an American driver. So does that mean that Sergio Perez does go to Cadillac?
Danica Patrick.
Yep.
She's not commentating anymore, so she's probably right for that.
To do something. I'm so unsure now with seeing all of the other open seats, seeing what Cadillac may bring. I'm a little bit stumped. What are you thinking?
Well, so I've gone down the usual route for me, which is down the business sense route for this one. Now, I'm still, being a Holden man through and through, I'm still absolutely poisoned by GM's approach to global motorsport, and why out of all of the brands they could pick, they picked a brand that represents stale old men is beyond me as the brand that they would use to enter Formula One, when Camaro represents sports racing. Like it's a racing car brand. Camaro was bought out to counter Mustang back in the day. Cadillac, spinners and spokey dokes type of stuff for me. And it's the same here in Australia with, the Camaro probably not being involved in V8 supercar for much longer. Toyota's obviously bringing the Super in, which is interesting because they've canned the Super as well. But from a business standpoint, for mine, if they're trying to evolve the brand to be the leading brand in the General Motors stable, then they need to not worry about winning, and they need to get branding in. And
that's where Daniel Ricciardo comes in.
It is, and you can say that I've swayed my opinion towards that to make that happen, but I haven't. Sergio could do it, but Sergio brings with him obviously the population of Mexico, and it does bring corporate dollars with it. But I don't think corporate dollars is where GM's at. I don't think they need that like a Haas would or a Williams would. They need eyeballs and they need supporters. And the way to do that is to get popular drivers into the car that people are interested in following. And I think, kind of like when Daniel went to Alpine or Renault. And that brought with it a whole heap of supporters and a whole heap of intrigue and interest into how the car would do. If they get 2 no-name drivers into those Cadillacs, they might as well resign to the fact that they're going to finish dead last.
Yeah. With no popularity, no followers or supporters or anything like that. I absolutely get that.
So something like, I wouldn't put Mick Schumacher in the car, but something like a Ricciardo and a Mick Schumacher, or a Ricciardo and even a Zhu, something like that needs to happen. If they go with 2 no-name drivers, then it's a flurry. With the other thing they could try and do is grab a big name. So imagine, having just spoken about it, imagine they got Alonso for a year or 2 years and said, you know what, we're going to give you $1 squillion for 2 years. Or they get Bottas, who's got a big following as well. We're going to give you $1 squillion for 2 years. We're not expecting wins. We just want you to come and help build the brand and build a race following. Then I think that that's probably a good thing. And you know, he's an option that I'd actually dropped off. Imagine Ricardo and Bottas.
Oh,
Talk about following.
Two Australians.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk about a big following. So I think that's what they need to do. You know, imagine they got George Russell. He's out of contract.
No.
But a big name to try and help say, you know, we're here to compete seriously, and that's why we're gonna, you know, give the car the best chance of succeeding.
It's very nice of you to say that George Russell is a big name.
Well, it would be a big pull though. Like, I mean, I'm with you. Like, yes, he's the lead driver now at Mercedes. He was always in Lewis's shadow. Who knows what he's going to do this time? He has won Formula One Grand Prix, and to pull him away from Mercedes would be a big coup.
Yeah, you've said it now. Ricardo and Bottas, and no one else.
No one else. That's it.
I would be a Cadillac fan. Finished.
Right. Well, I need a job at Cadillac. The other thing, of course, to bear in mind is that Sauber becomes Audi next season, so they're going to get a ton of development, and the Racing Bulls are empty. I can't see Yuki getting a new contract at all.
No.
Unless somehow this year he pulls a rabbit out of a hat. I think if Liam does his role at Red Bull, he'll stay for stability. And I love the fact that Gasly's locked in at Alpine, because for mine, that's not a guaranteed. I'm going to keep on this until it happens, but I think he is massively overrated. And albeit he's got a contracts as we've seen in Formula One, written in liquid paper. So pencil, yep. So yeah, an interesting one. But anyway, brought up mainly for the Cadillac conversation around what they're going to do.
You've racked my brain now. I'd stopped thinking about it because I'd locked into the fact that Ricardo was coming back and was going to do this, and I'd sort of moved away from that. But now it makes perfect sense. And now you've put Bottas into the conversation. I'm putting $20 to Dennis's money on that.
Both of them at that team would be phenomenal.
It would be.
They wouldn't win anything, but it'd be phenomenal.
It'd be a great after party as well.
So we move on to the last but not least in our Since the Last Show, Drive to Survive. I'm open to hearing your feedback first. How far into it are you? Did you binge the whole lot?
I'm pretty deep.
You're pretty deep?
I'm pretty deep.
Okay.
It's watching it back and watching and noticing the amount of stuff that they've done to create drama, to offset these people looking this way. There's footage of Lando at one race and Max Verstappen's reaction from a completely different week. And that is some married at first sight stuff that I wasn't in for. Because it's unnecessary. There was enough drama this year that wrote itself that they didn't have to play people off as the villain. Max celebrated with Lando the night that Lando won. They went out and celebrated together. They're fighting on track, but off track they're as friends as competitors will be. So I don't get why they're building drama where there was enough drama this season internally in teams, externally in the media, things happening, people first race wins, that they had to play up on the drama. I still really enjoyed watching it, but again, I'm not sure if that's because I'm just having F1 withdrawals and watching the cars and seeing everyone. So I'm a little bit down this year.
Well, let me set it up for you. We were watching Meghan Markle's version of Martha Stewart Does Cooking. And so boring.
Please tell me that's not actually a show.
So boring. Oh, absolutely it is. So boring and dry was that we switched across to, and I promised, and I said, we'll watch Drive to Survive. It's been much more entertaining. I'm 2.5 episodes in and I'm sighing. I'm like, oh, what have I done? It's nowhere near as good as, like all good things, they end up going home to roost, I think. But I'm just not as into it as I was in those first few seasons. I forgot how much drama there was at the start of the season with all the stuff that happened with Red Bull. And I'll get through the end of it, but I'm only 3 episodes in, and it's not on the top of my list of things to do. Now the season's starting. And that's the other thing, like releasing it the week the season starts, I get that people are going to binge it, but it's too close. It needed to come out in January, or it needed to be the filler between the two seasons.
I was going to say the filler, like before everything. If they just had it over that sort of break, and even if they release an episode a week for 10 weeks, it would give people something to watch into the Formula One. So
New Year's Day.
Yeah.
is when it should have come out. It should have come out on New Year's Day, because New Year's Day, it's the perfect thing to sit there and smash through 10 episodes of.
Oh, I completely agree.
But they didn't. They released it on the Friday night of a long weekend, which is great here, but of a long weekend where the weather's great and people aren't sitting inside necessarily watching TV. So I'll get through the end of it. But Drive to Survive is out on Netflix now. So give it a look. Let us know what you think of it or thought of it. What did you forget?
It is a very key thing to say. If you're the friend in your friend group that watches the Formula One and you're trying to get your other friends to watch Formula One, send them Drive to Survive, because it does entice people into it and lets them figure out who the drivers are and what they're doing. So that's still, I think, a good thing about it. But watching every race last season and knowing everything that's going on and seeing the reactions the way they did sort of downplays it a little bit. So, if you're trying to get your friends to watch Formula One with you on the weekends, send them Drive to Survive, because it's the gateway.
As much fake drama and plastic as this season of maths. So, round 1 preview. We are here. So, obviously, we mentioned this at the top of the show, because why wouldn't you? We are less than 4 days away from seeing the cars on track for the first time in anger practice, kicking off 12:30 this Friday. So, what are we excited for? We've got the full schedule in Australia. It doesn't happen at every venue. So we've got F2s, F3s as well as our local V8 supercars, or supercars as they're now called. And I'm pretty sure we've got Carrera Cup, and I'm not sure what else. Probably some other local categories where there's Formula V or Formula Ford or Ep3 or something like that. But we've got the full palette, which is great. So we'll get to see some of the F2 and F3 where the racing was really good last year and the year before. You highlight.
Big F2, F3 game. That's a really, really good close racing last year.
So 2 stops. The weather at this stage expected to potentially rain during the race. So we've had an extended hot streak here, being the tail end of summer, but Melbourne traditionally a late summer. Into autumn, it stays hot. But yeah, it's Sunday, 20% chance of rain.
Just bridging on that, however, quali will be hot, 34 degrees, and then a 10-degree drop and rain. So that will be. We know what the road, and obviously it's a street track. We know what the road around here does when it's a hot day one day and raining the next. It is slippery.
100%. It's
going to be insane watching this many rookies in new cars driving in what could be a slippery track. It's gonna be a crazy race if the weather plays out the way that it looks. But you did say we're in Melbourne, so that means that it could be 36 degrees both days with no rain, or raining both days.
It could be 36 degrees and rain.
And rain, yep.
So we had that this morning. I went for a walk and it was raining and about 862 degrees humidity. It was great. So it's going to be 2 stops. And as you said, I hadn't even thought about that. The fact that, Saturday afternoon, we generally get late temperature here if you're listening from overseas. So what are we now? 4 o'clock today, and it's 32 degrees, but that's the peak of the heat of the day. So qualifying is going to be right in that peak heat on Saturday, which is, I think, 34 or 35 degrees. So track temp-wise, probably 50 degrees. And our road surface is different to any road surface around the globe in terms of the coarseness of the bitumen and how that'll chew the tyres up as well. So it's going to be really tough. Really tough.
It's going to be super tough. And just having a look, so it'll be, if the predictions are correct at the moment, it's going to be 23 degrees on Sunday at the start of the race and raining.
Yeah.
So that's just, just is the absolute recipe for carnage and a really, really good race.
And some of obviously the F2 drivers who've been promoted this year have driven at Albert Park last season, but the race was third in the calendar, fourth in the calendar, so it was a little bit later in the year than now. I think it was in mid-April last year. It was around the Easter weekend or after the Easter weekend last season. So even those drivers who've driven here who are rookies last season, it's going to drive totally differently to how it did last year as well. So they're really in for it, and we're in for a treat. I reckon it's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
So getting into predictions, this is something we're going to do before every race, and then we'll have a look at it after the race. Starting off with surprise packet, what are we expecting to see that's going to be good or bad as a surprise packet in the race this weekend?
Kimi Antonelli outperforming George Russell.
That would be a surprise packet and a half. For me, I think we're going to see a Williams finish potentially, certainly inside the top 10, but I'm going to say towards the crispy end of the top 10 as well. So maybe I'm going to call top 6. So Williams finishing in the top 6.
Sainz did win at Melbourne last year.
He did in the Ferrari.
He knows the track. We know he can win a race. He knows the track, and yes.
Yeah, so for me, Williams inside the top 6. Biggest mover, so who's going to stuff up qualifying and have to recover themselves? Or not stuff up qualify exactly where they're supposed to, but get really lucky during the race.
I'm a little bit torn to say this, but I actually think Pierre Gasly will.
How dare you? Get out! Get out!
I think he'll have as much as I don't think it'll carry on. I think he's going to go in this season with a chip on his shoulder with something to show everyone, and I think that'll be the biggest mover for me.
It's actually a really good call because I'd instantly forgotten the fact that it could be a wet race on Sunday, and the wet race obviously is a great leveler in all motorsport. Formula One's the same, so that's actually not a bad call at all. In terms of biggest mover for mine, I'm going to go with Bortoletto doing something spectacular. Now, I'm not expecting them to qualify much further north than the back row or two of the grid, but I think if he can, particularly again taking into consideration the rain, that maybe, just maybe, that Sauber might have something in it to get a move on, because last year it did. I think when Zhu scored some points or qualified well, it was in the wet.
Yeah, he got 10th. 10th in the race last season, scored a point.
Yeah, in the rain.
Yes.
Or a rain-affected race. So that's going to be my biggest mover. It could have been actually my surprise packet, really, but I've got high hopes for him this season. I think he's going to be a driver to watch. So that's my big call for Melbourne, and he did race there last year.
I am excited to see what the stake car does. Just simple as that. I'm excited to see what the stake car does because it hasn't done anything yet. So,
well, they've got nothing to lose.
No, they don't.
So, pole position,
Max.
Yeah, I'm not going to agree with you there. I don't think Red Bull didn't start strong last year. In fact, wasn't it, Australia was the race where Max's car caught on fire?
Yeah,
and the brake blew out on the way into pit lane.
Yeah, rear right brake locked on, but he was still at the top. So he was still like Red Bull came out last season strong. It was a few races before anyone else sort of caught them. So I still think Max. I think he'll be pissed from a lot of the stuff that happened last year. So I think Max for pole.
I'm going to go for a purist and go with Oscar. Australian on pole would be a great way to start out the season, and particularly if you can get there ahead of Lando. We know McLaren's going to be strong. We know Red Bull will be strong. It's who's going to be stronger. I don't know if there's going to be any issues with that wing deflection as well that they identified out of the practice.
Well, there is some new changes, laws, and rules coming from that this week. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, so, but yeah, for me, Oscar would be delightful to have him get on pole position in his third Australian Grand Prix.
Yes.
So it would be great to see him maybe get on pole position and then drive start to finish as the winner.
Yeah.
For win, for you?
I simply because it's raining, I'm going to say Max again. I think the conditions will be favourable for Max, as we've seen. He's one of the strongest drivers. I would love for Piastri to win, absolutely. But I think looking at the conditions, looking at everything going into the year, I think this is going to be Max's weekend.
Have you, and I'm going to stick with with Oscar, if he can put it on pole, I think he can go start to finish. Have you changed your mind after testing about who will take out the drivers and potentially constructors?
I'm gonna reserve my answer for that one for a couple of weeks. I want to see a couple of things, but at the moment, no. But I'm going to reserve any changes for that 2-week extension on that one. Just seeing a few things. My view and seeing some of the rookies, to be honest, has sort of changed, and watching them and some of the lines that they're taking. I'm super excited to see them. My views have changed on those guys, seeing him in a Formula One car versus seeing him in the F2s and in closed door racing and things like that. But in terms of constructors and championship, no, not at this stage.
Fair enough.
What about yourself? I feel like that you might have changed your views there.
No, look, I still think Max will get it done, but it's just going to be a lot harder than last year. I think this season's going to be far more nuanced than last season because of there's only so much Max can fight with one hand behind his back. So if the car is good, let me put it to you this way. If Max was in the McLaren, I think that you would put $1 million on him winning the Drivers' World title.
200%.
Because Max isn't in the McLaren and he's in the Red Bull, and we don't know what post-Newey era Red Bull is really going to look like. I don't know that it's going to be a lay-down misère as much as it probably was for the first half of last season set Max up to win the title.
Yes.
If the second half of the season mirrors this entire season, then he's only going to win by a point or two if he does. I'm not convinced that albeit Lando says he's put on the big boy shorts and is ready to compete, I'm not convinced that he can. I'm really not. I think Oscar's a more saber-toothed competitor. I don't care how you are, what you think, who you are, and I think that we'll see that this season.
Kimi Räikkönen.
Yeah, I just can't see Lando doing it, and that's not. I think Lando's good for the sport. I think he's a good driver. I just don't think he has the killer instinct.
Lando has an opportunity this season to do something that will change my view on him, and that is to come out and fight and to come out and not throw the toys out of the pram and not complain and all that sort of stuff. Like, I understand that the stuff that goes wrong, but he has an opportunity, and I've opened the door on him a little bit to make this opportunity, to take the opportunity, sorry. Because if they go into the season running correctly and do things right together, him and Oscar can run away together. And he has an opportunity to change my view on him this season. And we've seen Max grow up, and we've seen other drivers grow up and mature and change and things like that. Even Hamilton. In Hamilton's first few seasons of Formula One, I could not stand even hearing him talk. But there's a little bits of things that he says, and other than the strongest driver pairing. So if they go into the season and change, you're right. They will walk away, like can run away with it. But that's a big if.
Yeah, and I just can't. As much as I've got big hopes for Liam, I can see him supporting Max better than Sergio did.
Yeah, but
which is a big call, but not winning, and probably not even being second, because there's too many other strong cars and drivers for him to just be outright favourite to run second. But if Max isn't winning, you can see him still second or third, right? So It's going to be there. But no, so look, to pull us back on focus. No, I haven't changed. It's just I think Williams adds such an interesting mix into that top 4 team conversation now, because I think Mercedes are on the back end of that top 4 now. McLaren, Red Bull, Ferrari, and then you've got Williams, Mercedes together. So it's just going to be such a different year, and I can't see Max getting the first half of the season his own way as much as he did until McLaren started to sort their car out halfway through the season. I think they'll start much stronger, and because they start much stronger, as good as Max is with an average car, it's going to be tough for him to walk away and then manage the back half of the season like he did last year.
Yeah, no, I do have to agree with you. And it's not like he's racing against Esteban Ocon in a McLaren. Like, he's racing against 2 good drivers in the quickest car in the field from last year. So, yeah, I do agree with what you're saying.
Well, the good news is 4 days to find out. So, as at the recording of this podcast, so we are I'm not sure, we haven't decided when the next pod will be, but whether it's the afternoon after the race or the next day. But it's only going to be a week for us between shows, which is good for you guys, I would suggest, but certainly going to be heaps to unwrap out of the coming race in Australia. And then we're back to back for a couple of weeks as well throughout the schedule. So finally, it's the wait's over. Finally, we're here, and really, really looking forward to getting into it.
Absolutely. I think after the race, next podcast as well, we'll probably have an interview with the Formula One driver as well. So that's pretty interesting. Pretty keen to have that on the show.
Fantastic. Absolutely, we are. So, as always, if you could do us a huge favor, we're massively appreciative of the support that we've had thus far. So thank you for that. But if you are new to the show, welcome. Thanks for making it this far in. Do drop a like and a subscribe. Let your friends know about us as well. We'd love the support. But we'll keep doing what we're doing anyway, because we just enjoy talking about Formula One and everything surrounding it. So thank you for tuning in. Rhyss.
Thank you very much, everyone.
And that is it for the Top Step podcast. We will see you after the first round in a few short days. And as always, thank you for listening.
Thank you.